It's season 4 of the Mother's Quest podcast. At time of recording where I live, we're on the threshold of spring, a season of new growth and fresh opportunities. Around this time 3 years ago, I was visited by 2 birds trapped in my house, and letting them out became a sign for me to slay my self-doubt and choose into living what I now call my epic life. I could never have imagined that day that 3 years later, I'd be releasing my 58th podcast episode, building community with over 600 members of our Facebook group, and welcoming the 4th cohort of incredible women into my Mother's Quest Circle experience. If you find yourself on the threshold of powerful shifts or new creations blooming in your life, and hearing this message feels like a sign to you, I'd love to support you. Follow the prompts on the show notes for my Mother's Quest Circle or Spark Your Epic Life coaching series, or email me at julie@mothersquest.com to learn more about how we can work together. Now, on to the show. Hi, and welcome to Mother's Quest, a podcast for moms like me ready to live our own truly epic life. I'm Julie Neal, a life and leadership coach, community builder, writer, and mom to 2 high-energy boys who challenge me to grow into my best self. I'll be right there. Where was I? Hello, and welcome to the Mother's Quest podcast. In this first episode of season 4, I'm honored to host returning guest Katherine Wintsch, releasing this conversation during the week she's launching her first book, Slay Like a Mother. One of my very first interviews when I launched the podcast, Katherine's first episode has become a favorite for so many mothers who resonated with her journey from self-loathing to self-love, and the premise of her TEDx talk, encouraging us to take off our masks as mothers and release the myth of perfection. Katherine's truth-telling and insightful research on modern motherhood has been featured by the Today Show, the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and Fast Company. And she regularly writes about the topic of modern motherhood for Working Mother magazine and now on the Slay Like a Mother platform. As CEO of the company she founded, the Mom Complex, she dedicates her life to making the lives of mothers easier, working with companies like Johnson & Johnson and Unilever to help develop better products and services for mothers. With the debut of her book, Slay Like a Mother, she's on a mission to help mothers around the world destroy what's holding them back, the dragon of self-doubt, so they can live the life they want. One mother I've come to know who's wrangling her own dragon in order to bring a powerful new venture to the world is Brook Markavitch. Here's Brook with this episode's dedication.
My name is Brook Markavitch, and I am the founder of Momentum Marketplace, a market of goods and services powered by moms. And we are on a mission to get moms paid so they can lead a flexible life. Over the last few months, as I have been building this tech startup, plenty of self-doubt, imposter syndrome, and what the heck was I thinking starting a startup as a mom of 2 small kids entered my head many times. But when it does, I do 2 things. First, I look at other mamas that are rocking it. And 2, I harness my grandma's inner confidence and energy. So today, I want to first say thank you to Katherine for rocking it as a mom CEO and for writing an important book that I can't wait to read for us mamas, because we need to slay that self-doubt so we can bring our best versions of ourselves to the world. And today, I'm so excited to dedicate this episode to my grandmother, Nancy Dickens, because she taught me what it means to have momentum and to slay like a mother. I'm sure she had self-doubt, but I never saw it. She projects so much confidence, even in a nursing home now, and she was always going like the Energizer Bunny. In our family, we like to call her the matriarch. She grew up in a small southern town during the Great Depression. She came from generations of tobacco farmers and mill workers and was raised by her 12-year-old sister. After she married my grandfather, and he came back from war injured, she went to work at the law office. She worked her way up and eventually ended up working for the General Assembly in North Carolina. She went on to get her real estate license and ran her own real estate business for years until she recently stopped. She's 90 years old. She's as stubborn as can be, but I believe I take after her. She loved to work. She loved to make a difference. She fiercely loves the people in her life, and she is as loyal as can be. When her Sunday school class of over 60 years did not agree with homosexuality and my brother had just come out, she walked right out of that class and never went back. For a Southern small town lady, she's as liberal as you can get. As I build Momentum Marketplace, I have to harness that Energizer Bunny energy that my grandmother showed me throughout my life. She is one of my biggest supporters, and I am so thankful that I am actually returning to my roots, back to North Carolina to grow this company. So from tobacco farmer to tech, from matriarch to granddaughter, the tides are changing, but the momentum is continuing.
Thank you, Brooke, for trusting in your momentum as a CEO and sharing the beautiful story of your own grandmother's energy and confidence in this dedication. I think you're going to find a lot to light your way as Katherine and I delve deep into how she conquered her self-doubt and practiced the dance between hard work and letting go in order to get her book published, persevering through over 24 rejections in the 6-year process. She shares highlights of some of her favorite practices and perspective shifts from the book along all the Epic Guideposts. And then Katherine gives us an important challenge to raise our own awareness and confront our own negative thought patterns. A simple, though not easy shift that she says can make a tremendous difference. For me, this idea that I would forever defeat my dragon didn't feel reasonable. But inspired by Katherine's message and something one of my clients shared recently, I'm holding a visual picture of my dragon of self-doubt as a baby, strapped into the car seat in the back of the car, far from the wheel and the ability to derail my course as I travel the road of my epic life this season. What picture do you want to hold? Join us in the Mother's Quest community and share your thoughts. I'm Julie Neal, and this is Mother's Quest. Katherine, welcome back to the Mother's Quest podcast and to season 4. You're the first guest that I have returning, and you are my second guest ever. It feels like a very full circle and amazing moment to have you back.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Julie. I'm happy to be here.
So I will encourage anyone listening to go to our original episode to hear your full story and journey, the impact that your mother had on you. We go deep into your TED Talk and the story behind that about taking off our masks. There's so much goodness there. But the inspiration for this conversation is really to draw on the incredible resource of your new book, Slay Like a Mother, which is coming out on March 19th. And this episode will be airing 2 days later, which is also a day that you're going to be having an interview on the Today Show. And so many exciting things will be happening when this conversation reaches the ears of those listening now. We talked about this idea of living an epic life in our first conversation, but I would love to hear about the epic journey that has been bringing this book to life. Tell us about that.
Yeah, well, it's been quite the journey. It took me 4 years to get a book deal, sell a proposal, which nonfiction books sell on a proposal, not the actual manuscript of the book, which was learning curve for me. So it took 4 years to sell the proposal. And then once it was sold, I wrote it in 7 months. So it was a total of 5 years, now 6, because the manuscript was due a year ago. So a long process with a lot of hard work, but definitely worth it.
Tell us the full title of the book and really like what your purpose was. You know, I'm curious in that book proposal, what was the proposal that you were really pitching? What was the contribution you wanted to make through this book?
Yeah, so the title of the book is Slay Like a Mother, How to Destroy What's Holding You Back So You Can Live the Life You Want. And I wanted to write this book because of the debilitating self-doubt that I personally experienced in my life for many years. And then as a researcher, as CEO of the Mom Complex, I have often been in a position to study the lives of women and mothers around the world. And what I've seen is that everybody's struggling. Like nobody has it figured out, yet we continue to hide and act like we have everything under control, and we're really hurting ourselves and our self-esteem. And I want to try and put an end to that.
I have your book in my hands, and I read one of the first pages was an invitation Do you have a copy of your book handy?
I do.
I wonder if you would be open to reading that to us, because I feel like it sets the frame for everything that follows.
Sure, yeah, I would love to. Okay, so invitation. The dragon raging inside of you has a name, and it's self-doubt. You're the only one who can see it, so you're the only one who can slay it. You have two choices. You either learn to slay this beast, or it will slowly and silently slay you. If you don't rise up and take back your life and sanity, the constant battle and constant fighting will wear you down and wear you out. And you, your family, and the world will miss out on the best of you. You already have all the tools, resources, and weapons you need within you to slay this dragon. You just don't know it because you've been denying the dragon's existence for entirely too long. I slayed my dragon and my life dramatically improved. Now I've dedicated my life to helping other women do the same. You can do this. I will help you. Let's go slay some dragons.
Thank you for that. When I read that, I started reading the book over the weekend and I'm still working my way through it. There's so much there. But it just happened that I was reading the beginning right before I was facilitating the last of one of my Mother's Quest circles. And this was a virtual session with an intimate group of mothers. And it's a signature process that I've created since the time you and I first spoke. And I used it as our opening to our closing. And it was really interesting to hear how it landed for the women. And for many of us, it was a really powerful and helpful metaphor. And for one of the women, she had a hard time with this idea of slaying the dragon of self-doubt because she felt like it wasn't realistic. That, like, of course, we're going to have this idea that we're going to like plunge a sword and it will be dead forever. Didn't feel true for her. And of course, I've been reading pages ahead. And so I don't think you're actually saying that we're going to like end self-doubt forever. But I'd love to start with the metaphor of slaying the dragon and have you share a little bit more about like how and why you chose that and what your thoughts are about this flip side to it in terms of being real and authentic, like to imagine that we're not going to have moments in our life of self-doubt. I don't think that's what you believe. So I'd love to hear you share a little bit more about that.
Yeah, definitely. So the dragon of self-doubt, you can think of it as your greatest worries gone wild. And so my research shows that 80% of the time, a woman and a mother's self-esteem took a pretty big setback was when they were a teen or younger. And so something happened, something cut you deeply, hurt you hard, kind of scarred you in terms of like self-esteem. And not knowing what to do with the pain, we stuff that pain down, and that pain turns into this dragon of self doubt, which decades later mocks your every move, says you're not good enough. And it is possible to slay it. It absolutely is possible. And I am living proof of that. And by slaying my dragon, like it just means that it's no longer in control. Like I am in control of my life. And there are times where I might fall back to old habits, but what I say that is that it's the echo of the dragon. Like the dragon is gone, but it's the echo of just old habits of like the negative voice coming back. But what I say now, I catch myself. Like I caught like a reflection in my face in the car today and I was like, you look so old. Like that was my first thought. But then I caught myself and I said, but you know what? Some days I don't. Like that's what I'm immediately able to witness it and, teach it some manners, versus controlling me.
I absolutely love this idea of the echo. And what you just said is very similar to what I shared in our circle. First of all, I just honored that was her experience of it and that there was no right one way to receive it. But the other thing is that I really felt like it reminded me more about Elizabeth Gilbert writing in the book Big Magic, where she talks about fear and that we will have fears. Like it's not that fear will disappear, but fear always rides the back seat. It doesn't get to control the volume. It doesn't determine where the car's going.
Yeah, that's exactly what I would say is true in my life. Like it's no longer in control. Like it's not dictating actions, behaviors, decisions. It's very freeing.
Yeah. I'm also really appreciating this idea of the echo in relation to our own development. I know that you bring a lot of the lessons you learn to your children, and I do too. And my oldest, who's a teenager, has been having some moments that feels like he's like been stepping back a little bit. And this happens for me too, where I feel like I've made progress and then I find myself feel like I'm right back where I was before. And so I've been reminding him that our development doesn't happen in a straight line. It happens in spirals. And that sometimes what feels like a dip or a regression is really just where we are on the next ring of our development. And we have all the knowledge and the new awareness that we didn't have before that we're bringing to that. And we much more quickly catch ourselves, just like you were describing. So this metaphor and the content of your book just feels extremely relevant and powerful for me. I think I'm still working on, I've made a lot of progress, but I'm still working on self-doubt and looking externally for validation.
You know, what's interesting about the dragon is once you learn enough about it, once you make your way through like the second section of the book, you'll see that there's so many different things you can do to kind of starve the dragon and weaken it, you know, by not comparing yourself to other people, by saying no more often. But you ultimately kill the dragon by, say, kind of you're killing it with kindness, but the kindness is toward yourself.
Yeah.
And the dragon cannot survive when you make a mistake and you tell yourself it's okay, that it's normal, that it's to be expected. Like when you are kind to yourself and you demonstrate self compassion when you're not perfect. And that's the way you kill the dragon. The dragon cannot survive when there's self love present. And so that's just another reason that it is possible to kill it, because it can't survive with that much, you know, light and love.
This is reminding me, I can't remember what movie this was in, but there was also that metaphor about the two wolves. You know what I'm talking about? Well, I'll have to find
I
that.
talk about that. Yeah, no, I talk about it all the time. I wrote a blog post about it. I love it. I love that story.
Maybe that's where I heard it. Will you tell us that story?
Yeah, it's like a story where I think it was like Indian chief was talking to his son and he was telling him that inside of every human being there are two wolves. There's one that is evil and it is greed and jealousy and gluttony and, you know, just all the things. And then the other wolf is kindness and compassion, and they're battling each other. And the grandson asks which wolf wins, and the grandfather says the one that you feed.
Yeah.
Was his answer. And it's really true, and it sounds so simple, and just because it's simple it doesn't mean it's easy. Those are two very different things. But you know, at the end of the day, when you kill the dragon, when you kill the warped belief that you can and should always be doing more, that what you're doing is not good enough, and you can kill that thought and you can be in control of it. And at the end of the day, the energy that flows through your body, your mind, your soul, it can either be filled with self-doubt or it can be filled with self-love, and you get to decide which one. Nobody gets to pick except for you. And that sounds very simple, and it is, but it's hard as you know what. I mean, it took me a really long time to figure this crap out. Like, it's no joke, but it is that simple. It's just not easy.
I want to come back to the journey of your book. And you said how many years and how many rejections was it?
Yeah, 5 years, and it was rejected by 23 publishers.
23 publishers. So I think like one of the things that I personally grapple with is how to hold the desire to achieve something that matters to us and to go after that alongside, you know, the disappointment or things not happening as you would hope, not achieving those goals. Could you use the example of the book and your journey with the book for how you fed the right beast in this scenario as you had rejection after rejection and you had this goal that you were working towards?
Yeah, it was hard. It was definitely the first kind of solo thing I'd ever done. Everything else I had done in business and in my career was a team effort, you know, where this was like my writing, my thoughts. And so the critiques and everything were very personal. So that was without a doubt very hard. But I always believed that this message that mothers are not at war with other mothers, we're at war with ourselves, that I would get it out into the world. And I really hoped that that would be through a book. And I hoped that was the platform, but it was really out of my control. Doing the best I could with the proposal, it's this whole other world of trying to get agents. It's the machine. And I always just trusted that this message would be out in the world and I would give it my best go for that to be a book. But if it wasn't meant to be a book, then it would be a conference series or it would be a podcast. That it would be in the world. I was confident about that. And my greatest hope was that it was a book, but I didn't know if I, had what it took to write a book and get it published. So I just kind of worked my tail off. I don't like to lose. So, that helps, and just knew that the universe would align when it was right and if it was right.
So there's a certain amount of like commitment to doing the work and to holding on to the part of the dream that has like meaning and value to you, but then also letting go of the things you can't control.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the dance. It's like I wanted it so bad and I could work my what off on the proposal and do it and redo it and make it more beautiful and make it sound even better, and that's all I could do. And I had to turn it over to other people, an agent that would sell it to the publisher and, lots of other opinions. And I did learn that all I could do was my best and I could put it out in the world, but I couldn't go make the deal. I couldn't strong arm my way into that conversation, it was what it was. And I really believe in that stuff. I've written about this on my blog before, but I really wanted to go to the University of Virginia and always dreamed of going to that college. And I was rejected, obviously very hurt at the time. And then went to my number 2 school, which was James Madison University, also in Virginia, and met my husband, who I love more than, anything in this world. And if I had gotten what I wanted when I wanted it, I would not be married to that man who is a huge part of who I am and why I am the way I am. And so I think about that a lot as an example. So when I got the 23rd rejection, I just thought, I'm upset, obviously disappointed. I've worked hard, to try and get it sold. But one day I will look back on this and say, thank God it didn't happen then. I just knew that that would happen. And I do look back on that now because it wasn't the book that I ended up selling. The proposal was 10 times better than what was shopped around those 23 times.
And so what do you think in the end was the thing that, enabled the book to come forward or for you to find the right publisher? Do you think it was really just that you had evolved your proposal or,
Yeah, I was kind of like put it on the shelf. It was rejected 23 times. It was several rounds. It was different versions. Like I was like, maybe it's not meant to be a book. And then out of the blue, a friend introduced me to a freelance editor in New York who I shared the proposal with, and she felt like it was good, but it could be stronger and better. And she would help me. Like I hired her to help me make it stronger. And then she ended up introducing me to several agents and like big time agents, which I had an agent and that's who I'd shopped it around with. But this woman changed the game for me. She helped me make the proposal better. And then she made introductions that ended up getting me my agent, and he is an extraordinary caliber. And he sold it to multiple publishers.
So in the end, you actually were able to choose who you wanted to publish with, right?
Yes, I was. Everything changed when this new agent got on board, and he was the one that came up with the dragon slaying theme. It was always about self-doubt. It was always about conquering self-doubt, but he's the one that came up with the idea to personify it as a dragon, which was just extraordinary and so cool. And it made my own battle, which I had previously thought was kind of like wimpy and woe is me, like, oh, I didn't believe in myself and I had to learn to believe in my, it was just a little wimpy. And then when it was about slaying dragons, all of a sudden it was heroic and it was epic and something that people would be proud to achieve as opposed to, embarrassed about.
Well, I think that is a great segue to move into what I call the Epic Guideposts. And living my epic life has become the goal, the vision for me and Mother's Quest. And it absolutely does first hold this connotation about creating our own life, our own hero or heroine's journey, following that calling, filling our life with the memories and the moments and experiences that matter most to us. But it also is an acronym mnemonic for the guideposts that I think help us to live that life when we're raising our children. And so I wanted to invite you to reflect on each of these guideposts and then specifically to draw on some of the stories or practices or things that you have in the book. And you maybe even let us know where in the book they fall so we can find them when we get our copies for each one.
Yeah, that sounds great.
So the first guidepost, E, stands for engaged, and it's about being engaged mindfully with our children. What are some things that you have learned in your own journey about this or that you have in the book?
Yeah. One of the things that I do with my children are 9 and 11. I've been doing this for several years, but when we go to bed at night, we lay in bed and we discuss our peak and our pit of the day. And it's just a nice quiet moment to talk about the best part and the worst part of our day. And in my mind, and I write about this in the book, I think it teaches our children that every day has highs and lows, and that every day is not perfect, and that it's okay when bad things happen. And I learned about some of those things. I learned about when my son would say somebody teased him for the way that he pronounced something that really hurt his feelings. Or sometimes I'm the pit of their day. I yelled at them, but I handle it a lot better, laying in their bed under the cover of darkness versus being stressed out about 50 other things on my mind. And so, I don't pretend that the whole rest of my day I have, very mindful and engaged, interaction with my children. But the bedtime, like we're really conscious of it. And I think it helps make us all feel okay being human.
Yeah, I think there are those pockets of the day with our kids that I think can be so powerful. Before my son was in high school, now he can walk or it's a very short drive. It was the drive to school was this really amazing time to just be fully present without distraction.
Yes.
But bedtime also, I think, is such an important time. We have some of our own traditions, but I love this idea of peak and pit, or sometimes we call it the rose and the thorn, but bringing that into the bedtime routine. So I'm going to be incorporating that. I love that.
Yeah.
I'm curious, another tenet of Mother's Quest is that, we really help our children to grow or to pursue living an epic life by our example from what they see in us. Through this process of writing the book, I'm curious if there's a tangible impact you've seen your children observe that has impacted them.
Yeah, I see it a lot. And, somebody asked me recently when I was on a panel, like, was it such a sacrifice, like being away from my family, like to write the book because it was so intense? And I said, it was a sacrifice, but like the pride that I see in them. So I see in my daughter, who's 11, she has such strong entrepreneurial skills, like, because I'm an entrepreneur, and she has notebooks of bath bomb businesses that her and the neighborhood girls are, they figured out the costs of all the stuff on Amazon and how many days a week they could sell it. I mean, it's just hilarious, and like how much profit they're going to make. And so when I see my daughter doing things like that, that she can come up with ideas and make money, doing them. And that's really encouraging. And then with my son, he's so proud of this book. And he talks about it. His teacher tells me he talks about it during share time. He's in the 3rd grade. And he's like, my mommy's writing a book, or my mommy's going on the Today Show. And he says he's going to be the first person to buy it. And, I think they're proud. And because I'm a whole human being now and not a shell of a human being as I used to be and operate my life, that I can actually appreciate that. Like when I see them, I can actually see my children be proud of me, and I can feel it, as opposed to before, maybe they were proud of me, but I just couldn't receive it.
So powerful. And I love the impact on your son seeing such a strong, powerful, impactful role model and knowing what women are capable of, I
Yeah.
know that's shaping him in powerful ways.
Yeah, it's really precious. I mean, he says the other day, he was like, Mommy, like, why do you get to go on the Today Show? And I said, well, my book is like for mommies, and mommies need a lot of help. But, there's a lot of mommies out there. So it kind of works for the Today Show. And he was like, but so many people write books. And I said,
Wow.
well, I have this great publisher, and, they're working really hard and they really believe in this book. And I'm so grateful to have them. And he said, there's so many authors, even at that publisher, Mommy. Like, why would your book, it's not lost on him.
That's amazing. I love
The attention on
insight.
it is significant, and he can feel it. And it's,
Yeah,
that feels pretty cool.
amazing. The next guidepost, P, stands for passionate and purposeful. This is about the impact that we make beyond our family. What are some of the lessons you've learned and that you share for how we can step into that impact? And obviously, self-doubt is huge here too, about, conquering that. I think that's one of the scariest things when you have a big goal that really matters is that fear of failure. What are your thoughts on this guidepost?
Yeah, I think the passion is really important. And I think if you follow your passion, you end up helping other people. So I'll give you an example. Just the other day, I was doing radio interview locally here where I live in Richmond, Virginia. And it's a really well-known radio station around here, male and female host. And we're talking about the book, we're talking about all this stuff. And I ended up over the course of the interview sharing a story that I tell in the book, which was the point in time that I realized that despite the success and the things that I had accomplished in my life, that I really didn't like myself. And I didn't know why, but I knew that I didn't. And I was very curious about it. And that's what kind of sparked my 2-year self-help journey. But I told that story, and I look over at the female co-host, and she is in tears. And she says, that is exactly what I said to myself when I woke up this morning, is that I don't like myself. So here was this
Wow.
like very well-known radio host that was so moved by me exposing my brokenness that she felt brave enough in front of all of her listeners to say that that's what she said to herself when she woke up that morning. And so, like, even your passion can be about, broken things. And when you spend time healing yourself and working on yourself and following your own passion, like, it helps others do the same. And it's this ripple effect that, I talk about in the book, when one woman like sharpens her sword and like figures this stuff out, like it really just encourages other women to do the same. So it's not selfish at all.
And so, how do you summarize what your impact is that you want to have on the world?
I think the impact that I'm having is that I'm teaching women that they are in control of how they feel about themselves. And that is really profound. And I see it affect people. I see it change people. I get letters all the time. I give speeches a lot and workshops, and it's life changing. And, I always say that I don't have any magical powers. Like, I'm just a girl from Richmond, Virginia that lived in the deficit of her own doubt for 2 decades, but I figured out how to get out of it. I really did. And it's possible. There's nothing inside of me that does not exist inside of other people. And I think that's really a neat gift to be able to give women.
Yeah, what a powerful story. I'm thinking about that. The image of that Japanese pottery came to mind. Have you heard about
Yes.
that? How
Yes,
they
of course.
create the
Yes,
most beautiful pottery from the broken pieces.
exactly.
I'm noticing my own curiosity here around impact and also, being able to conquer our self-doubt. Over the last 2 years since we first talked, I've also been on a journey of stepping into more social activism and really looking at oppression and injustice. And especially in the self-help world, I think, there is this tendency to kind of gloss over the real, like, structural inequalities And I can see where, a woman or a mother who is working two jobs or struggling to pay her bills, like where there are really significant obstacles to achieving her dreams, could take this in. I just need to change my thoughts when there are like real structural things. I'm curious what your thoughts are about that. And I feel like it might tie a little bit too to this part of your book that I was looking at about the difference between struggle and suffering.
Yeah.
Could you say something about that?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting point, and I think that there's no doubt. I mean, I talk about in the book the way that dragons are born and this kind of slight to our self-esteem, or this taking the wind out of us. And there are many times that is because of abuse and neglect and horrific circumstances that people are born into that are extraordinarily difficult to overcome, as opposed to just a sense of lack, in general. And, I would say that in general, identifying like where it was born, how it was born, and how we're feeding it can provide some clues. And the struggling versus suffering is that struggling is the external circumstances of, it's really hard to figure out what to feed your family 5 nights a week. It's really hard to care for an aging parent. It's really hard to be a working mother. It's really hard to be a stay-at-home mother. Like, those external circumstances are hard. The suffering happens when it's internal, and when we beat ourselves up for not doing a better job at what we're struggling at. And we think that we're the only people that struggle. So we keep that to ourselves, which causes us to, dip down into the suffering.
What have you found is one of the most powerful tools to catching yourself when you're in that cycle?
One of the most powerful tools is being able to hear the negative voice in your head when it attacks you. So I mentioned earlier, I caught some glimpse of myself and I was like, wow, you're like, oh, if you don't hear that, then that just like stays in your psyche, and you're just yelling at yourself all day that you're not thin enough, sister enough, wife enough, daughter enough, whatever. You're just attacking yourself, and you're believing it, you're buying it, you're listening to it. It's toxic. But when you can hear it, you can set it straight. Just like when I caught myself being like, oh, you look so old. But sometimes I don't. Like right now I do, but sometimes I don't. And again, it goes back to it's simple doesn't mean it's easy, but it's no longer a runaway train for me.
Yeah.
That I lived 20 years of my life that nothing I ever did was good enough. Like nothing, no matter what I achieved, it was like I needed more. It was just a bottomless pit of trying to find my self-esteem in the opinions of other people.
I am thinking about my training as a coach. And one of the key coaching skills that we learn is the skill of self-management. And it really is like tuning into your own narrative. In a coaching session, it's how to make sure that you're not like running away with your own thought when you might get triggered by something that you're hearing. But I can see it's like the skill of self-management that you're talking about too, even just for ourselves, not in a coaching relationship, but as we hear our own voices in our lives.
Yeah.
So thank you for that. And I love that. I've also heard the idea of continuing the metaphor and personification of like turning the volume up or turning it down.
Mm-hmm.
What are the voices to amplify and the messages to amplify, and which ones are really not? Back to the feeding of the beast. Which ones are going to feed?
Yeah. Yeah. I always say that you can hear the voice, but it doesn't mean you have to listen to it.
Yeah.
Like it can still pop up every now and then, but I no longer listen to it. Like, and I correct it. I'm like, I don't know. Like I think I did my best. And that's huge we have a lot of power over our thoughts, but we have to be aware of them. And when we're just hustling so hard to be loved and volunteering for everything and filling up, God, I heard this quote the other day that said, like, being overly busy is anesthesia for an empty life.
Ooh, wow.
I was like, whoa, like that is so true. Yeah. It was true for me for 20 years.
Yeah. The next guidepost, I, stands for invested in ourselves. And I feel like this is a natural next place to go. when you do notice, when your awareness is raised, when you don't use the anesthesia of busyness, where are the places to then invest in caring for yourself? And what have you learned about that?
Yeah, I think you have to have time to invest anything in yourself. And so the main way that I do this is that I put myself on my calendar and I set reoccurring meetings, and I'll go like 2 months out. So like 2 months from now, your calendar's not as crazy as it is tomorrow. And I set reoccurring meetings for exercise, maybe for meditation. And perhaps most importantly to me, I color code them in purple so that every week I look at my calendar and I have the option to delete the things. I don't go to every single purple thing on my calendar. I kind of overinflate the purple stuff to start. But it's a very different action to have to delete yourself from your calendar than it is to put yourself on your calendar. What I found is that, if I had a yoga class over lunchtime and then somebody said, "Hey, could we talk at 1?" And I said, "No, but I could talk at 2." Then the people would go, "Okay." Then if I was there first on my calendar, like all the other stuff still fit. I'm just as productive as I was before I did this, but I actually get stuff done for myself. And it doesn't have to be healthy stuff. Like it could be girls' night with like wine. Not like I'm some exercise queen. But anyway, like that's an investment in myself and it's a visual one. So that if I look back on my calendar, I mean, I could fast forward backwards through time and you could see how much I cared about myself by how much purple was on my calendar that stayed.
And, if you open up your month and you see that there's no purple there.
But if I look backwards and it's deleted, or if it's like Friday and I've like deleted a whole bunch of purple, and there's some ways that more of that has to happen than less, and it might be a little nutty, but at least I'm doing it consciously. I'm starting strong. And so I always say, and I talk about this in the book, that it definitely goes around the investment in time, is that if you don't have enough me time and personal time in your life, it's because you believe that other people deserve that time more than you. And I'm not talking about like spa visits or anything. It could be like 15 minutes, just walk around the block. But if you're not taking that time for yourself, it's because you're just giving it all away because you believe other people deserve it more, that you're not worthy of it.
Yeah.
And even in lower income families, we've done so much work with lower income families. And even just saying like the barter system of like, hey, I need a break. If you take my kids on Friday night, I'll take yours on Thursday night. Of just having like a minute to just breathe, just be in your house by yourself for a hot minute.
Yeah, I'm struggling with this myself too, about the power of a morning practice and talking with other mothers about it. And so often the first thought is like, I can't even imagine there's no time in the morning for myself to reset. But even just like 5 minutes of mindfulness and awareness, doing something that feels good, stretching, like whatever it is. I think sometimes we imagine, like back to your whole thing about perfection, that has to be like this hour-long experience of like journaling and all the things. But we really can carve out like even little parts that are just for us.
Yeah. And I haven't been like kind of a lull of like morning meditation. I need to get back to it because like you said, it's like 10 or 15 minutes and it really does change the course of my day, or it's very grounding. I can come back to it. If I get flustered later, I need to get back to that.
Well, the last guidepost, C, stands for connected to a strong support system. And this is so we realize that we do not have to be alone on our journey and that we can find the guides and the champions, like that woman that was so instrumental in you getting your book published. What have you learned about this guidepost? What places in the book can we refer to help us with this?
Well, I would say that I'm finally okay, like on my own journey, I'm finally okay asking for help from the guides in my life. And I think for so long I was like, I got it. I don't need any help. There's nothing here to see. And I'm very blessed. I have a fabulous support system. I'm okay asking for help, or I need a break, or, I got to go write this book, or like whatever it is. I believe I'm worthy of having the help that I'm blessed to have, I always say, like, people who don't ask for help don't get help. And we're so bad at asking for help. And so I think that's a big part of feeling more free is knowing when you need a break and being okay asking for it. I interviewed a mother the other day. She was a physician and a mother of 5 children, and she still didn't feel like she was doing enough. And it was like, my goodness, like, when are we going to feel like we're enough? And she was just hustling so hard to feel like she was doing enough, and it wasn't working. And that's a lot, it's a lot of weight to carry around. But like I said, it is overcomable. It's fixable.
Well, we're at the point in the conversation where you can give me or anyone else who wants to say yes a challenge. What would you recommend for us to, start taking steps to slaying our dragons of self-doubt?
Yeah, I love that you asked that. And I would say to catch yourself in the act of a negative thought and to refute it. So catching yourself when you're like, oh my God, you're always late, you're such a loser. Or, of course you missed the field trip notice because you can't, get your act together. Catching yourself in the act is more than half the battle. But then correcting it in the moment of like, that's not true. Of just saying like that sentence, like, that's not true. Like, I'm not a loser for getting this, or I'm not a knucklehead for not winning this business, or whatever it is. But that should be like the gold star, is like you catch yourself in the moment and you repeat it. Remind yourself that it's not true.
Yeah.
Because it never is.
I love the power of that language. Having that language at the ready. Like,
yeah,
I know what I'm supposed to say here. That's
right. That's right. Like, and even just being aware. I always say that the negative voice in your head is like a shadow behind you. And all it takes is like the shining of the flashlight for that shadow to go away. Like your awareness, like you being aware that you just called yourself fat, ugly, stupid, whatever. That awareness will make the thought dissipate. It might come back 8 minutes later, but it will dissipate it in the moment. It's very powerful, and it sounds so easy, and it's not easy, but it is simple. It's a flashlight.
I love all of these analogies. They're so powerful. And I really appreciate this challenge. And I will not only accept the challenge for myself, but I'm going to really encourage my teenage son to do the same and for us to share about that.
That's awesome. Yeah.
And before we move off into and close with acknowledgments or takeaways, I'm feeling really curious about, from the last time that we spoke, which was about 2 years ago, what you've learned about yourself in your own evolution. Because I think by then you were already living a fulfilling life. You had already in many ways slayed the dragon. What has changed for you since we had our first conversation?
I would say since we last, the thing I'm probably most proud of is my team at the Mom Complex really stepping up, and they're really running the company, and they allowed me the freedom and the gift to kind of step aside from the company and write this book, and just watching them grow and blossom. And for so long, people thought that the Mom Complex, that people would come because of me. And I never believed that. And I was so determined to prove people wrong, that I could hire people that were better and smarter than me. So that's been my greatest joy over the last 2 years, is watching people that I love and have helped groom and grow, really seeing them flourish is just incredibly rewarding.
It's amazing that you've been able to do that. And I was reflecting on that question for myself too. I was listening to our episode and thinking about, well, first of all, I feel like I have to have some self-compassion because I was listening to like the quality of the sound. I was like, oh my God, like what was my microphone? It was terrible. But I think in the spirit of your book, with like more love, just thinking about like what really appreciating that person that I was 2 years ago, who had not ever used my voice in that way, didn't know about any of the tools or technology. I'm so grateful that I was able to like take those first steps and that I had an amazing guide and guest like you so early on. And the other thing that was coming to me is just, I did a podcast earlier today on someone else's podcast, and I was talking also about a lot of the work that I've been doing. Recently, I released an episode with Trayvon Martin's mother, Sabrina Fulton, alongside a fundraising campaign to support her Circle of Mothers, this healing retreat. And, in doing that, I'm talking about racial profiling, and I've been also doing work around building police accountability, and how like 2 years ago, all of that felt so challenging. Like I was so afraid about like getting it, saying something wrong, or, having a goal. And what if I don't reach that goal? Even that I'm like still excavating, even the last few months. But I think the more you do it and the more you just start to like shed these layers. And I think I am definitely more brave and more imperfect, more willing to like step into the imperfection with more ease and actually like be okay with that.
That's beautiful. That's really big. I mean, when you think about like progress we make in our lives, like that's major progress in a short period of time to be comfortable with things that made you uncomfortable before. Those changes, and even when we do make the changes, we're not awake enough to appreciate them. Like, good for you to be able to reflect on that.
Thank you for this full circle opportunity to be able to do that reflection, and for giving us the gift of your time and your journey and your experience 2 years ago at episode number 2. And then, now in the episode 50 something that this will be.
Yay.
I want to reflect just what some of my takeaways are from this conversation, and then give you an opportunity to do the same. I really do appreciate the metaphor of the dragon. And for me, it is a little bit less of a like, slaying it completely dead, and more about like wrangling it and giving it a little bit of compassion, not letting it sit at the front of the car. And I'm also really going to take away this idea of the echo, because I think that the voice or the messages that even though we think we've moved past them, when we hear them again, it can feel like it's fresh. And just holding the perspective of it's just the echo of old patterns, old ways of being is really empowering. I for sure am going to take with me this idea of talking more freely about the peaks and the pits in our life, and bringing that practice specifically to my children. And then I think the last thing is continuing to hold on to big dreams and being okay with like years of rejection, and continuing to work toward it, like with my best self, but then also knowing sometimes like it's okay to let go, and it's okay to trust in right timing and right guides coming into our lives. So I'm taking a lot of gifts from this conversation today. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say I'm so happy to be back on, and I've really admired your journey. And I think the word that comes to mind is just bravery, that I think you've taken on, this new format of the podcast, and starting it and evolving it, and taking on difficult situations and conversations. And I think you should be really proud. I think you're really awake. There's just a lot of people that aren't yet, and I want to help them get there, and I know you want to help them get there. So it's nice to be able to do it together, because life is better that way, easier.
Yes. Well, we will continue being in community and both working in our different ways to help mothers step into more fulfilling, epic lives, and to raise children that are doing the same. Good luck to you with your book launch and bringing it out into the world. Please let us know if we can be a support to you. I'm so excited for you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you so much for coming along with me on this episode of the Mother's Quest podcast. I hope this conversation sparked something that will help you live your epic life. If you'd like to get show notes and learn more about the Mother's Quest community, head over to mothersquest.com. And while you're there, I would love it if you would follow the prompts to subscribe, leave a review, and help us spread the word. I want to end with some words to help light the way on your quest. Seize the day. Love your people. Honor your gifts. Until next time.